Listen up, I got a story to tell. Today we are going to be talking about depression here on the Research Her podcast. So I've been wanting to put this episode out for a while, but I had been choosing not to, and I think not putting it out is really holding back on my creative juices, okay? And honestly, I produced this episode quite a few times before, but I don't think I was truly ready, or I know I wasn't truly ready to put it out there. And I was speaking as someone who, was trying to pour out of an empty cup, and I felt it, and that's why I never put this episode out. So it was like prematurely, I was trying to prove a point that I was all good and I was over here living my best life, and I wasn't. I was a whole mess, and we'll get into that later, but I do realize the climate of the world right now, and I want to just put it out there. I know that with the Rona going around, we don't want to talk or think about nothing else besides that and what's on Netflix, but hey, listen to it when you want to. I'm going to be talking about depression here today, and I'll be talking a little bit about how this quarantine has been beneficial for me. So yes, here we go. Thanks for joining us here at The Research Her, the show working to improve the health disparities for women of color, one topic at a time. And I am Alicia. I'm here learning and growing with you as we research our way to wellness. So before I get into me, let's talk a little bit about some articles that I found that really resonated with the story that I want to share, or a part of the story I want to tell. And the first paper that I found was an article in Nature Biotechnology, and it was published in 2018, and it's titled "The Evidence for a Mental Health Crisis in Graduate Education," and it's by Teresa Evans, Lindsay Bira, Jasmine Gastillium, L. Wise, and Nathan Vanderford. And what they found in this study was that graduate students are 6 times more likely to experience depression as compared to the general population. And only 6% of the general population scored at having anxiety and depression, where about 40% of graduate students report having depression and 40% with anxiety. So this is an average over everyone. Women are more likely to score at a higher risk, and those who are transgender or gender nonconforming have even higher risk. People of color are minorities in higher education and research, and it is known that people of color generally suffer from higher levels of depression and anxiety. So although this study did not touch on that, we can kind of make the assumption that depression and anxiety would be higher for people depending on their ethnicity. And as I am a Black woman, I'm going to grab a quote directly from the paper, and it says, "These data demonstrate a critical need for additional studies that investigate intervention studies that could address the mental health crisis in the graduate trainee population. It is only with strong and validated interventions that academia will be able to provide help for those who are traveling through the bioscience workforce pipeline." The second paper I want to touch on is an article that was in Psychology Today, and it was titled "Post-Adrenaline Blues" by Dr. Eileen Kennedy Moore. And what Dr. Kennedy Moore has is a theory called post-adrenaline blues. What her theory says is that after pushing and pushing and pushing, and then getting to the end and stopping, we feel like depleted, dissatisfied, and prone to questioning everything about our lives. And it's usually a temporary condition, but while you're in it, you feel like we would feel completely miserable. What she believes is happening, right, is it's possible that the abrupt withdrawal of stress hormones could be at the root of this theory, in that, like, now that you no longer stress yourself out about something no more, now the withdrawal of these hormones is causing one to feel miserable. One word of advice that she gave in order to recover, if you feel like you may be someone who has suffered from post-adrenaline blues, is to eat well, rest. We all know these. Do some low-key exercises. Walk, stretch, or even taking a yoga class. Reach out to people in your life who you care about, especially if you've been neglecting those relationships lately. And baby, let's get to the part where I tell you what this has to do with me. So one, I really believe like reading these articles was important for me because I love to feel normal. I love to know that there are other people who have experienced my experiences and that I'm not the only one. So that's kind of where I wanted to step in. If you have experienced depression during graduate school, and if you've ever experienced like pushing hard and getting to that final finish line and feeling as if all this for this feeling, baby, I'm here with you. And let's start to normalize it so we can create a better support system to improve these cycles of hard times and depression that we experience. With that, I want to share my experience or a little bit of my journey. So my black ass was depressed, okay? And I can't quite pinpoint that first depression snowflake that fell. So in my head, I kind of think of depression as a whole, a snowy day where, you know, you have that first drop of snowflake, and sometimes it just snows and it comes down and it melts, and you know that depression just kind of melts away. But then sometimes you have a snowstorm and it comes, you able to build a snowman, snowball, and that's the type of depression I feel like I allowed myself to get in just because I wasn't able to identify it as what it was. Yes, so that's my metaphor. Or simile. Did I say like? Yeah, depression is like. Whatever happened to us using the word simile? Because I feel like simile got left behind somewhere. Everything is a metaphor now, even if you use like and as. And I'm just like, okay, fine, sis. It's really a simile, but whatever you say. Okay, well, back to my point. I don't remember when that first snowflake fell where I was like, this is the beginning of whatever, but I know it had to be somewhere in 2017. And it got really, really bad when I was in China. And I know that because I just remember it being so difficult for me being away from my family. So what I chose to do was avoid them. Like, I avoided talking to people as much as possible. I think I only really spoke to one, maybe two people. But even still, I never shared anything of substance with them that wasn't about like hard work and getting my degree, you know, but nothing about my emotions or what was going on. I really had a difficult time talking to people because it almost felt like I couldn't see them, and it hurt worse to have to hang up the phone or know that I'm not going to see them than it would be just to not talk to them at all. And I think that's just because I have avoidant behavior as a symptom to my anxiety. And when I got back from China, one thing was interesting that I look back on and I'm like, wow. So I was gone for China for almost a year, like consecutively, like a whole, like 9 months I was gone. And when I got back, it was maybe the day before my birthday. So I wake up pretty much the next day and from being in China, and I was trying to hide from people. I didn't want to be around anyone. I didn't want any human contact. Looking back on that, that's interesting, right? You spent all these months away and you don't want to have a welcome back party and you're literally hiding away in a bed. I didn't want my phone by me. I just literally was isolating myself. I, again, couldn't identify that as depression, but there were times back in 2018, maybe between being in China or and going between being in China being home and going back to China, where I would like just sit in my room, and I would lay in my bed and I would just stare at the ceiling crying. And it was just like this feeling of either being overwhelmed or underwhelmed by life. And it kind of was what it was. I didn't know that there was anything wrong with it. I just thought I was overly emotional at the time, and again, couldn't pinpoint it for what it was. I didn't want to share any of my thoughts or any of my sorrows with anyone because I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. All my friends and family, they're all, they have their own lives, and I just didn't want to put that heaviness on anyone. Hey, I got deeper and deeper into my own head, and I honestly didn't think it was as deep as it was until I started seeking the help I needed. But things just snowballed from there, and I pretty much got worse as I started setting up for my defense. I don't want to go too in detail because the last time I recorded this and I did that, it was literally almost a 2-hour episode. And I'm like, I don't want people to have, I don't want to put anything out that long for something like this because it's supposed to be a turnaround where things get better. But anyways, I wanted to completely avoid all things that were fun, if that makes any sense. Like anything that even smelt like it was fun, I wanted to avoid. I just didn't think at the time I deserved it. So I really wanted to stay home and do nothing all the time. I didn't feel like I deserved fun, love, or a social life. It was a very wild force of a life or a mindset to kind of be in at the time. It didn't seem like depression. What it seemed like was I was being like, quote, focus, unquote. So the two can seem like the same, but they are completely different. What I'm comparing now is like the idea of being focused versus the idea of what my depression looks like. Focus for me looks like my friends ask me to go somewhere, do something with them. And I'm like, oh man, I really would love to go to the concert, but I got finals that weekend, or I have a paper, or I'm trying to submit something. So man, I can't go, but I would have really loved to go, but I have to stay focused, right? Depression is when you don't even feel like you have the choice. Nope, can't do that, don't want to do that, don't deserve to do that. And you have literally, your brain has convinced your body just to shut down and that you cannot go outside. And that is what I want to tell about my experience. There have been times where I had to say no and I didn't want to. But once I was kind of in grad school, it was like I said no, but truly my body felt like it didn't deserve it anyway. So, fuck it. Like, you not going out and you shouldn't and you don't want to. And another thing was I didn't feel beautiful. I don't want to say hideous, but I went at least a year and some change without looking in the mirror. I would literally check for boogers, eye boogers, nose boogers. And that was the extent of how much I looked at myself. Even when at the time I was wearing a lot of twist outs, I stopped doing my twist outs in the mirror. I started just doing my twist outs without looking at a mirror. And I was doing YouTube at the time. And I just remember thinking I'm recording myself and I have to show people that I'm confident and But I wasn't. I was really hiding a lot of internal fights I was having with myself and telling myself, you do think you're beautiful, you do, but all along, it was me trying to convince myself that I didn't need help and I didn't need to improve my mental state. Yeah. There we go. So after defending, that's when I really had my true crash, when I had to really accept that what I was experiencing was more than just sadness or being focused. What made me realize it was bigger was I had accomplished this huge thing. Academically, this is what I had been working for my whole life. So I defended, I graduated, and I felt absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And if anything, I felt kind of bad. I felt that I had done something and I'm so academically accomplished, and to not feel great after something like that, you're ungrateful. I was looking at myself you're ungrateful. You should just be so happy. And I wasn't. I had my crash, and what that looked like to me was doing a lot of actually, I'm not ready to talk about what my crash looked like for me. It was very personal. It resulted in me getting the help that I needed. I started being a lot more transparent with my therapist after that. So I have been seeing a therapist since about August. I think August was when I started seeing my therapist. I, at some point, started lying to my therapist about being okay and didn't let her in my head. I would just have these random conversations with her each week and explain like a little bit of the layer of my pain. But I never really talked about the depths of what was really going on in my head. So truly, even though I was reaching out and getting help, I wasn't getting help the way that I truly needed it. After experiencing this, okay, something's got to give, I started opening up to my therapist and truly allowing her in and discussing some things with her that I hadn't discussed like ever. What I found through therapy and just through all of this was that what I needed was time. I needed time where I could exist without absolutely no responsibilities, which I still have. I got to pay these bills, but I was able to do that without any responsibilities. And due to this, honestly, this quarantine, because we have to stay at home, all I have is time pretty much. And it has been good for me. And my family has been protected thanks to his grace, baby, because it's a lot of people out here dying. And I have to acknowledge that it's a lot of people out here sick and holding on. But thanks to his grace, we are holding on strong. So I find myself able to spend this time really not finding myself, but like recreating my visions and realigning myself to my purpose. I found that this was what I needed. I was starting to get tired of research, felt like I didn't belong in research. Now I'm realizing that I just needed time, and that's okay. All of this is to say, if you feel like you are depressed or you have some type of anxiety, PTSD, sister, brother, you are not alone. You matter, and it is okay to seek the help that you need. So one thing I think about is like if your leg was broken, right? You broke your leg and you never went and got the medical attention that you need. You might walk with a limp your whole life if you could ever walk on that leg again. So if something happens to you mentally that has broken you, whether that be grad school, this pandemic, giving birth, losing someone who is living or alive, you don't want to live the rest of your life thinking with a limp, if that makes any sense. So get the attention that you need to make sure you aren't living the rest of your life thinking with a limp. I hope that my sharing helped in some capacity, but that's really all I have for today. If it was helpful to you, just let me know. Or if you just have questions about anything, email me, social media, leave a review for the podcast. And I am at The Research Her everywhere pretty much. And until next time, I holla.